I'm Elle Woods, and I want to tell you about the most dangerous bill that's going to pass Congress that no one is talking about. It's something called the Genius Act, and this is truly the makings of the next financial crisis. The worst part is that several Democrats are going to vote for it. This is 99% going to pass Congress because most people are not even wise to the fact that it's up for debate. It has already passed the House. It is up for a vote in the Senate soon. The reason that there are so many Democrats who are willing to support it, such that it will pass, aside from the fact that many of these Democratic senators have accepted donations from crypto companies, they are using the line that this is going to regulate crypto. Here's the catch, though. Crypto is not meant to be regulated. That is kind of the whole point of it. The Genius Act does a lot of pretty dangerous things, but the main thing it does is that it allows stablecoins to be held on company balance sheets, and it allows certain companies to issue stablecoins, basically like printing their own money. What it actually does right into the legislation is that Elon Musk's X, is allowed to create its own currency. And any other social media company that gets a waiver from the administration is allowed to do the same. The bill also rolls back rules that the Biden administration had put in place that required actual banks to hold crypto as a liability on their balance sheet. And in the event of a bankruptcy, it would require banks to pay back crypto investors before it paid back actual depositors. Yes, that is as insane as it sounds. While Democrats are claiming that this is going to regulate crypto in any sense because it gives some visibility into what companies are doing, it actually doesn't really, in practice, do anything. Because, for example, this legislation would allow Sam Bankman-Fried, while still in prison, to buy a stablecoin business and run it, even though he is literally in prison for running a fraudulent crypto exchange. I should mention that there's a reason that there is a 200-year-old legal standard that forbids companies from issuing their own currency. And that's because it is a massive risk to the economy. And people who remember the financial crisis will recall that the last time the government chipped away at one of these standards, which was repealing the Glass-Steagall Act and basically breaking the firewall between commercial banks and investment banks, that directly led to the financial crisis. Now, what they're about to do with crypto is that on steroids, because crypto does not actually have value that cannot be boiled down to something imaginary. And yes, people will say the US dollar is a fiat system, it's not tied to anything. Yeah, it used to be tied to the gold standard, and at the time they took it off, the United States was dominant enough and trustworthy enough that the dollar could be the reserve currency despite it being a fiat currency. That doesn't mean that you can just make anything a currency. Some people might say, oh, a stable coin, it's pegged to the US dollar, so that's safe. No, it's not a dollar just because it's pegged to the US dollar. Nor do some of these stablecoin issuers actually hold the deposits in reserve that are required to make a payout, for example, if there were to be a run on the bank. That also has literally already happened with the stablecoin Terra Luna. Also, if you recall the situation with Silicon Valley Bank, part of the reason that they failed was because the tech bubble burst and they had a lot of crypto deposits on their balance sheet. Now, at the same time, there were two other banks that were facing the same issues. Signature Bank, which also got bailed out, about 20% of their balance sheets were crypto deposits. The one no one talks about, though, is Silvergate Bank, which had 90% of its deposits as crypto. Government didn't bail them out, they just collapsed. Now imagine if all the banks had stable coins and they all have hypothetical value. Plenty of banks are already exposed to crypto, even though it's not formally on their balance sheet, because many of their depositors have crypto assets and they're taking loans from those banks against those crypto assets. Now imagine if those banks were holding crypto like it's cash. I think about it like throwing monopoly money into the bank and you're pretending that the value of those assets in the bank are actually going up by the amount of the monopoly money. This bill would be the equivalent of injecting helium into the balance sheets of all the banks and probably several companies as well, because there is actually quite a trend of companies buying crypto as a form of cash management. Yeah, that type of accounting funny business is now a new common trend amongst a certain set of businesses. All you have to do is look at the Silicon Valley Bank, the Terra Luna example, to see that stablecoins are not stable just because they are quote unquote pegged to the dollar. If these crypto businesses didn't make money on issuing the stablecoin to you because it's pegged to the dollar and they were just holding it, keeping it safe for you. What would their business be? I think people really overcomplicate crypto in their head because it does seem very opaque. The way I see it is that it is an imaginary system that they have dreamed up that is parallel to the financial system, works on kind of similar principles, but at the end of the day is not actually based on any form of economic productivity other than just the speculation that number go up. Honestly, that's why so much of this has been born out of the manosphere, just like people hyping up valuations online on Reddit. But that doesn't make it real. I'm not even saying that crypto needs to be banned, but this bill kind of makes it equivalent to cash when, if you're thinking about all of its characteristics, it is very much a security. And so it should be regulated as such, but it's not. And when I say unregulated, I mean completely unregulated. There is no transparency. You can't trace who is who. You can be funding terrorism. You could be funding trafficking. You could be funding drug running, black market organ harvesting, could be anything. And also, these crypto exchanges, they have no circuit breaker. So let's say there is a run on one of these systems or one of these coins, or even the entire system, there's no circuit breaker to be like, okay, everyone stop trading. Which, yes, there are circuit breakers in the normal stock exchange. According to the Federal Reserve, they are already seeing spillovers of debt into the quote unquote regular financial system. There is already a widespread trend of people taking loans out in order to buy crypto. The Fed's data also showed that the zip codes with the highest portions of crypto holders were also spiking in terms of other types of household debt. So auto loans, secondary mortgages, things like that. And this is before Congress says that banks can pretend that this is actual money. People are already taking great risks with something extremely volatile. I don't see how this bill is not quite literally like planting a bomb in the middle of the financial system. And if you've been following me for a while, you know that I believe that Donald Trump and company don't actually care about the financial system and whether it blows up. In fact, I think they might see it as an opportunity to create something out of the rubble that they could have more control over, especially something digital and algorithmically run thanks to the data scraped by Doge and their friends at Palantir.